Good evening, Officer Baza. Good evening, Jamar. How's it going? Hi, Lisa.
How you doing, James?
Doing good.
Hey there, James.
Hey, Lisa. How are you?
Good to see you. Nice view.
Oh yeah. when I get out of the office, I'm usually somewhere with my camera taking pictures. So.
Oh, you took that?
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh.
I spend a lot of my time out of the office running around the Bay Area with my camera.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Thank you. Let's see. Okay. Right. Folks coming in good.
Hi, Officer Baza. Hi, Jamar.
Hello.
Baza, I think we got you on mute, sir. Officer Baza, I think you're on mute. You might have to unmute yourself there.
Oh, there it is.
There we go.
Hello.
Perfect.
Hello.
I didn't know I had to activate the mute button.
So that's my fault. Most of my meetings, I have everyone muted when they enter in.
Oh, okay.
In case everybody comes in all at once. It sounds pretty crazy to hear,
Weird, yeah.
people say hi all at once.
I agree.
We'll give folks a few more minutes. We definitely have a quorum. As of right now, it's just MAC. Yes, it's just MAC members right now.
Excuse me.
Mark, I've got a question for you. Do you mind if Officer Baza goes before you? I don't think his report.
Not at all.
Much. Okay. So I don't want to get us rushing too far, but the meetings are recorded, and folks can always tune in after the fact. We upload the videos to Supervisor Joya's YouTube page. Joanne, absolutely no pressure, but whenever you want to begin, we can go ahead and get it started.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes, huh? Okay, so welcome everyone to the April 21st East Richmond Heights MAC meeting. I'll take the roll. That's the first thing on our agenda. Brenda Williams, not here. Victoria Curtis, also not here. Lisa Rafael.
Present.
All right. John Sargent.
Here I am.
All right. Jinwei Zhang.
Here I am.
And Stephanie Dyer.
Here.
Okay, so John Sargent is our newest appointee on the MAC, and we want to welcome you. And maybe if you could say a few words about yourself. You're a very familiar face here. We're happy to have you. But maybe if there's anybody on here who hasn't seen you at our meetings, you might tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, all right, the real short version. My parents moved up to East Richmond Heights when I was 8 years old. And I'm back, I'm still in the family home up on Arlington Boulevard near the Arlington Market. And I'm retired. I was in the electronic security industry and partly with law enforcement for 46 years. And I've been retired now 3 years, and the time is just flying by. And I'm very happy to serve with this group, having known East Richmond Heights like the back of my hand. I've watched how things have changed, and so I'm very happy to be on the committee officially now. And I have been here all along, ever since the first meeting.
Okay, well, thank you and welcome. We're glad to have you. So next thing on the agenda is approval of minutes. James, do we have minutes?
So my apologies, I suffered a family emergency and Supervisor Joy and I were not able to get those complete. I was not able to get them completed for his review. We lost grandma.
We'll just need them at our next meeting.
Appreciate you all, thank you.
No problem. And the next item is a treasurer's report. Again, James.
$3,000.
Okay, that's the same as it always is, right?
Yep. So we don't. It doesn't carry over from one year to the next, but it's a use it or lose it kind of thing.
Okay, great. So next on the agenda is presentations. And do we have a change in the way this is outlined, James?
Yep. We're going to ask Officer Baza to go first, and then we'll have Jamarco. Okay,
so why don't we start with Officer Baza from Contra Costa County? Where are you?
He's a highway patrol, excuse me.
Highway patrol, okay. I see you there, Officer Herman Baza.
Yes, so thank you. I'm Officer Herman Baza. I'm with the Highway Patrol. I'm new to this position. I've been on for about 3 months in this position. So I'm pretty fresh and still learning the area, learning the problems that we may have in our community. The biggest problem that I see is catalytic converter thefts. So just to kind of throw it out there, we've seen a rise in that throughout the Bay Area and throughout our community as well. So that's one of the problems I come across. And basically, my main responsibilities are traffic related issues. So I come in contact with people that walk through the area or whatnot, neighbors in the community, and they emphasize speeders on Arlington Boulevard. And that's I'm planning on doing some enforcement details where I focus on speeders throughout the area, specifically Arlington Boulevard and other areas. And I'm basically up for whatever the community's issues have, whatever their concerns are. I'm still eyes open, ears open to hear whatever the community's concerns are. So I'm very approachable with the community, and I'm looking forward to working with everyone here and our community as well.
Okay, well, thank you and welcome to our community. We're glad to have you. Are there any questions from the council for Officer Baza? Stephanie?
Hi, nice to meet you and welcome to the community. I've noticed that the fireworks are beginning to start up again, and just wondering, what might be happening around trying to figure out who's doing that or trying to control it.
I actually, it's interesting that you said that. Earlier, I talked to a resident in our community there, where I patrol. And actually, she said the same thing. I told her, hey, do you have any concerns out here in this area? She said she talked about the speeders on Arlington Boulevard. She also mentioned her other thing that she gets annoyed by in the evening. Around this time and a little later, she hears all these fireworks down in the lower area of Richmond. It's basically more of a Contra Costa or Richmond PD jurisdiction, you could say. Unless it's a traffic related issue, they will not call me for that. So, it's something that I can contact our colleagues out of Richmond PD or Contra Costa Sheriffs, and we can come up with a plan to see what the solution is to that. But yeah, we've heard of people complaining about fireworks.
Yeah, I agree with Stephanie. It's been every night recently, consistently. So, we can hear from the Sheriff's Department also. Are there any other questions from the council or from some of our neighbors that are at the meeting? comments?
Question, if you don't
I
mind.
think,
Question.
Joanne, I would just say that the fireworks issue is probably something that we're going to have to work county-wide on. I mean, it's just, we know this, right? It was such an unbelievable problem last year, and it's going to be potentially even a more dangerous fire year. So I just think
Right.
this is going to have to be a county-wide, like we're not going to solve this with us. And often they're far away. And so, I mean, I have no idea what to do, but James, I'm hoping you have some ideas on how the supervisor can, I just don't know what we're going to do.
I will respond, but Chris, I saw Chris unmute himself and kind of wave at the camera. So I think Chris has a question.
Thank you. Yeah, Officer Baza, my question was, I've also noticed that a lot of people have been talking about catalytic converter thefts. Do you have any recommendations for how people can protect themselves against that? Because it's so easy to steal a catalytic converter. You just get under, swipe it, and go.
Right. Preventative issues. I think cars that are a little higher from the ground are easier to fall victims of thefts. You know, one thing I do recommend is from an accountability side, you know, I'd recommend if people have the time and the resources to do so, there is a way to engrave your catalytic converter so that if your catalytic converter is found at a later time, we can run that VIN number that's engraved on that catalytic converter and give it back to its original owner. That's one of the things we recommend to people in terms of staying away from being a victim of that. I mean, it's try to keep it in your driveway. If you have a driveway, light up the area where you park your car. Typically, we see this in places of work or places where cars are parked overnight. And, you know, it's one of the issues that we're seeing here is thefts in catalytic converter, because they range from $200 to a couple $1,000s. So it is a commodity due to its the precious metals that it contains. So one thing I do recommend is if you can engrave your catalytic converter with your VIN number.
Thank you.
Officer, can I ask a question? I don't know if you know that. I read about recently there's a new law passed in California to consider any thief under $950 as a petty thief. They basically, even you catch the person, you pretty much release them right after it. So what are you going to do if you're going to catch somebody? What kind of a punishment coming with it, or is it just a catch and a relief kind of thing because of a new law?
You're talking about the zero bail law that just came out?
The SB 82 out 28, I forgot the number. I think it's SB 82.
So there's a law that came out just to kind of, without going too in depth into laws. So basically the delineation between a misdemeanor and a felony for property is $950. So anything under $950 is considered a misdemeanor and considered a citable offense. So if someone, for example, gets caught stealing, you know, something under $950, literally what that means is it's a misdemeanor offense, non-violent criminal offense, and by law we can only cite them and release them on site. So that's what one of the laws is in terms of misdemeanor or felony. Of course, if it's a felony offense over $950, some jails will not take that person. They will not take them unless it's a violent offense. Jails will not take them. They will not accept them. So even with a felony offense, we may have to cite and release that person. There's a law that came out recently that's called the zero bail law. basically jails are not taking anyone, even with the felony offense, unless it's an aggressive, violent offense. Even with a felony offense, they will cite and release them, and with zero bail. So we could go into debt in terms of misdemeanor felonies and who's getting accepted or not. But you know, the whole point of that law was to prevent people from being incarcerated and being due to the COVID during the pandemic. You know, they didn't want people to be exposed to the virus in the jails. So I believe that's one of the reasons for that. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Well, yeah, I think you answered my questions. Seems like if you do catch somebody stealing the converter of the car, it might just fall into misdemeanor. You'll have to release them right on site.
That's correct. Yes, some jails will not take them. They will not accept them. So, well, the only thing we can do is cite and release that person. So that person will walk away.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you again for being here to answer our questions and give us a report, and welcome to this community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so next on our presentations, I have the presentation on the tree preservation. Is that the correct order, James? Okay, so we're going to welcome, can you say your name, Hamar? You're on mute.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, Jamar Stamps.
Okay, so let's welcome Jamar Stamps. He's the principal planner at the Department of Conservation and Development, and he's going to give us some updates on the tree preservation ordinance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. James, is it okay if I share my screen?
Sure.
Thank you. Can everyone see the presentation, the full presentation on screen?
Yes.
Great.
Great. Thank you. So again, my name is Jamar Stamps, and tonight I want to provide a brief update through this presentation on the county's progress with updating the county's tree ordinance. Before I get into the presentation, I want to mention a couple of notes. One, hopefully you all received a copy of the memo we sent to the supervisorial districts summarizing the proposed ordinance update, and it also contains materials that are helpful for review of some of the changes we've made, particularly at the end of the memo. There's a table, a correspondence table that shows the difference between the original ordinance and the proposed ordinance language. The county's tree code is Division 816, and it's divided into 3 chapters. The first chapter is the Heritage Tree Ordinance, which I'll go into a little bit more detail about in a moment. The Kensington Tree Obstruction of View Ordinance, which as of right now is not being considered for any update, any substantive update. And then the tree preservation ordinance in the 3rd chapter of Division 816, which is what was receiving the bulk of the update through this process. And then lastly, I would also mention that through meetings that we've had recently with Supervisor Joya's office and the meeting we had last week with the El Sobrante MAC, staff at my department, the Department of Conservation and Development, or DCD, was made aware that there's a lot of concern in West County, and I'm sure in other parts of the county too, about potential wildfire risk. And so with that being brought to our attention, you know, it's not represented in this presentation, but I will mention it again that, you know, we're going to have to do some more research and some more vetting of these proposed policies to make sure that they account for potential wildfire risk. And so we still have more research and information to gather, research to do and information to gather on that part.
Jamar, real quick, I want to let everyone know that I put a link to the memo in the chat. So we do have a copy of it online for folks to view. Excuse me, thank you.
Sure, thank you, James. And so just for some quick background, in addition to the points I brought up in the beginning, this process was started because the original tree code was adopted in the mid-90s. And just based on the age of the tree code, there are a lot of policies and language in the details of the text that are worthy of an update. More specifically, we've received a lot of criticism, both from the public and our staff, about the tree code being too tough to administer. It's not intuitive for the public, and it's also, in some cases, not intuitive for staff. And this is especially important as we bring new staff in and they continue to administer the ordinance. It's unclear what constitutes a protected tree in the language of our ordinance, and so we want to simplify that. And the application process for a tree permit is too onerous, and that's something that we're trying to clean up with this update as well. A variety of resources were used to help develop the draft language that we have so far. We relied on information from local tree codes in the area, the county, as well as the Bay Area, the California Native Plant Society database for our list of tree species proposed for protection, which again, like I mentioned, will have to probably be reconsidered to account for potential wildfire risk, as well as meetings and correspondence with interested members of the public and county staff. And just to summarize the changes that I'll be going to throughout this presentation, first of which is the proposed deletion of the Heritage Tree Preservation District Ordinance. We've also removed some underutilized or antiquated text from the code. We've added some new definitions and also removed a few that seemed unnecessary. We revised the qualifications for what constitutes a protected tree, and we've also updated our permit and notification process. And so for the Heritage Tree Preservation District, which some of you may be familiar with, but if you're not, it's basically a process that's required to establish certain sized oak trees as a heritage tree. And with that comes, it requires approval from the Board of Supervisors. It's officially designated. It receives either a certificate or a plaque, I can't quite remember. And like I mentioned, it's a part of our current Division 816 trees. A little bit of history about this before I get into the next couple of points is it's suspected after some research done by staff that this Heritage Tree Preservation District was the original tree ordinance for the county. This district was established in the 1980s, and the Division 816-8, the tree protection ordinance, was established in the 90s. And so we believe that somewhere along the line, our current tree protection ordinance was supposed to supersede or at least amend Division 816-4, the Heritage Tree Preservation District, but it just never happened. And so we had this sort of outdated and really, ineffective ordinance, because the fact is that just because a tree is established as a heritage tree doesn't mean that it's completely prohibited from being cut down. The fact of the matter is you can get a tree permit to cut down a heritage tree. And so the reason why we're proposing to delete Chapter 816-4 is because of its redundancy. And then also we can simply incorporate that the relevant parts of that division into the proposed tree protection and preservation ordinance. And so you'll see later on that we've included a definition for heritage tree. And also by doing that, we don't change the designation of existing heritage trees. If there is a heritage tree that's already been designated by the Board of Supervisors as such, it will remain that way under the new proposed ordinance. Just really quickly on the definitions, this is just an example of some of the terms that we've proposed. So arborist report and tree removal are examples of what we now consider requirements for a tree permit instead of just having them as definitions in our code. We've created findings as well as proposed performance measures for these items to be a part of the tree permit approval process. We've removed sort of internal references in the definition section like director and department, which we don't really deem necessary because a lot of the language in the proposed code where you see those terms, the definition is probably pretty well intuitively understood. And then lastly, we added a few other definitions that help us provide more objectivity when we're reviewing tree permit applications. And a couple of examples include, again, a designated heritage tree, as well as a drip line for defining what a drip line is for a tree. That is a term that has often been pretty subjective in reviewing tree permit applications. And so that's something that we hope to formalize going forward. And again, like I mentioned, defining what a protected tree is under our current code is, it's almost like a riddle. And even for staff, it's been a problem. And so this is something that we hope to clean up through this ordinance update. Here are some of the high points of what we've proposed under the new code. The minimum circumference for a protected tree would go up to 48 inches or larger instead of what was in the previous, or what's in the current code, which is 26 inches. And we went to this size because these are, this was in line with what we've seen in contemporary codes. This is by no means written in stone. We have heard some criticism from, other members of the community about this. And so we are evaluating that and seeing if we need to adjust that down to cover others, even smaller sizes of trees too. But we have heard that feedback. We've also removed confusing location language about how a protected tree is identified. If you look at our code right now, if a tree is in what they call but don't define in the code as a riparian, foothill woodland or oak savanna area, is in a stand or 4 or more, and is on, they have these certain list of specified properties. I mean, it's basically a puzzle to figure out if you have a protected tree on your private property or not. And so we're looking to remove, all of those all of that complicated language so that it's easier for a homeowner to just simply figure out if whether or not they have a protected tree on their property. And we believe that the proposed language that we have in the code simplifies the definition of what a protected tree is, and it's consistent with what we've seen in other codes. It comes down to basically just the size of the tree and the species for the most part. And in our current code, we have a list of tree species that would normally be considered protected. We've downsized that list to remove tree species that are not native to Contra Costa County, and we relied on the California Native Plant Society's database for that information. And then we also removed some species that weren't really considered trees, there were more shrubs. And then again, like I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, we're going to be revisiting this list because we've already been made aware of at least a couple of species on that list that may be particularly vulnerable to wildfire risk. So we'll be definitely revisiting that, but also look forward to your feedback if you've seen that list and have any other suggestions. And then as far as permit and notification, this is something that has been an issue for DCD, the Department of Conservation and Development, for several years, just because, like I mentioned, the process is just too complicated for staff and the public to follow. So what we've proposed to do is have the tree permit process, both the permit and notification process, follow processes that we already have established in our code under Article 26-2.21. And if you're not familiar with that code section, you might be familiar with land development applications or entitlements such as a variance or a small lot review. I know East Richmond Heights probably does a lot of small lot reviews, but the notification process would mirror that process, what's already in the code. We've also, in order to better formalize what our decision is for approval or denial of a tree permit, have included required findings and evaluation factors. And we've also formalized tree replacement requirements. And what that basically means is, for however many trees are proposed to be removed, there's a formula, I think it's 1 to 3, that would require tree replacement or restitution for a proposed project. And then lastly, tree removal connected with the development application is only allowed after the issuance of a grading or building permit. This is an issue that BCD has faced a few times in the past, where a proposed developer would come in with an application for development and a tree permit. We would grant the entitlement and they would go and clear cut the land, and then the development would either be delayed or stalled or never happen. And so we end up just having a clear cut property for no real reason at all. And that's something that we're looking to avoid through language in our code. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions or take any feedback. Thank you.
I have a question. This is John. I think you mentioned that Kensington, there's no plan for an update. I'd heard that there were some residents anyway that were looking to update, I guess, what they have. Is that now off the table?
No, that's a good question. So as a part of the original intent of updating the tree preservation and protection ordinance, it was not the intent to update the Kensington Combining District tree obstruction of view ordinance. And the reason is because it's specific to Kensington 1, and we know that, well, at least we thought we knew before we talked to District 1 and heard from other Kensington residents that, you know, it's something that's sort of sacred for Kensington. And so we weren't going to propose any changes to it. But we did hear later on, as recently as the last few weeks, from District 1 staff and other Kensington residents that apparently there is a desire to update this ordinance. Now, we've taken that feedback. I can't say if whether or not we would be updating that overlay district or that ordinance as part of this process, because again, that ordinance is specific to the Kensington area, and the tree preservation ordinance is countywide. And so we see a greater need for updating the countywide ordinance, you know, faster than we can deliver an update to an area specific overlay district ordinance. And so we might be considering that as a, you know, in another process. For example, we're currently going through a comprehensive general plan update called Envision 2040. And it also includes an update to our zoning code. And our zoning code includes overlay districts like the Kensington Tree Obstruction of View Ordinance. And so we think that might be the more appropriate avenue for updating that ordinance. But like I mentioned, no decisions have been made about how that process will happen, but we are aware that Kensington has a desire to change it.
Okay, I have, are you finished, John? Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm a little confused about the process, and you can get a grading permit, but you can't get a tree permit until after your grading permit and before the building permit. And what is that process? And then if you can get a grading permit, are there requirements, tree protection requirements during grading? How is that handled? Because you can, I mean, you can really lose a tree during grading, or depending on the amount of grading you're doing. And
so if grading is included as a part of the proposed development, we would establish tree protection measures well before we issued the building permit. If there are trees that are supposed to be preserved and not removed, we do that with our current ordinance, where, you know, to put it simply, you know, we require fencing around trees, or we require an arborist on site depending on the potential hazard to that tree during construction or grading. You know, we have all of those measures in our toolbox now, and that's something that wouldn't change under the proposed code. But I'm just trying to think on my feet here. If we did issue a grading permit, I think we would have to issue that tree permit at the same time so that we could ensure whatever tree protection measures are part of the proposed project's condition of approval can be implemented before grading starts. That would be the normal process as far as I'm aware. And I don't think that would change under the proposed code. The provision I was talking about in the presentation was, let's say if there was a proposed development that there was no grading, let's say if somebody just wanted to build a single family residence on a private lot, and that, because I've had this actually happen before personally, and that private lot has a grove of trees on it. You know, under current practice, or at least prior practice, we're more vigilant about it now, but it's not a formal provision in our code. You know, we could entitle the project. You can build the house, we'll issue the building permit and the tree permit, or we'll issue the entitlement for the proposed development and the tree permit. And under prior practice, the developer could go out and clear the lot without any guarantee of when they would start development, other than what would be provided in the permit. Usually you have to start the project within 2 years or something like that. But with that, you can also get extensions for that permit. And so, you know, from a public perception standpoint, you could have a vacant lot that was just clear cut, sit there for years and not be aware of what is exactly supposed to happen on that lot. And so now the way that we're proposing to set it up is, if you come in for a proposed development, once we entitle that development, you're going to have to get your building permit before we authorize the cutting of any code protected trees. And that's, again, in order to prevent any lag in delivering the project, or someone just, you know, clear cutting the lot so they can make it more sellable to the next person.
Thank you. Any other question?
Yeah, so this is Jing Wei. I just want to ask another question. So what if an owner not really doing any construction, they just want to cut off like a mature tree in their backyard? Do they need to actually get a permit for that? Because recently I just saw one of my neighbors probably maybe cut off, you know, at least 100 years old tree. There was another redwood tree we cut off. That tree probably 4,000 years old. So I would just wonder, well, how do we enforce this law? If we do have a law here, how do we enforce it?
So that's a really good question. And that's one of the issues with our current code, is that unless we see very specific site information, like we know the size of the lot, we know the species of the tree, we know the diameter of the tree, under our current code, it's almost impossible to tell without that information if whether or not that tree is code protected. Under the proposed code, it would be simply what's the size of the tree and what's the species of the tree. And outside of that, you know, it would be very easy to define under the proposed code. So I couldn't tell you if whether or not your neighbor's tree was code protected, but if it was, theoretically, they would need a permit to cut it down even without any proposed development. And that would be the same under the new code too.
Thank you.
So how many species of trees are protected? And oaks over 48-inch circumference, and what else is protected?
So right now I can actually share my screen with you again to show you exactly which species are protected. Let's see. So this is can you see the table on your screen?
Table, yes.
Okay, so this is the table I was referring to in the beginning. And I'll just scroll down to here. On the left here, it's a little bit tough to read, I apologize, but here in the current code, it puts together how you qualify a protected tree, as well as all of the tree species in these two sections. Sorry, my screen froze. In these sections here, and I think there's 26 species listed in the current code. In the proposed code, there's 21. But like I mentioned, there's a few species here that may be particularly vulnerable to wildfire. And so we're gonna have to vet this list a little more carefully. But to answer your question, the oaks are definitely included. A variety of species of oaks are included on the protected species list.
And did they have a specific circumference to be protected or any size?
So under the proposed code, it's 48 inches.
Okay. Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Okay.
I'd add one more thing really quick before we close, is that, so in the memo that James provided the link to in the chat, we were giving the municipal advisory councils until the end of this month to provide comments. And so if you want to take that information, digest it a little bit more, and provide comments to James, and he can provide those comments to me by the 30th, that would be great as well.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming and presenting to us.
You're welcome. Thank you for the time.
Jamar, can you add your email address into the chat, please, before you?
Sure. I'll put my cell phone number too.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This sounds like these are great changes. So it makes it easier. Anything that makes it easier for all of us out here to understand is great. Thank you.
We hope so. Thank you.
Okay, so next on the agenda is the Sheriff's Office presentation. Do we have anyone from the Sheriff's Office?
We do not, and we don't have anyone from the Fire Protection District, but I have the most recent Chief's report that I'm going to read. Jamar, thank you for coming. Officer Baza, thank you for coming. We don't want you, I know you're both busy, so you definitely don't have to stay. You got other things you got going on tonight. We definitely appreciate your attendance, but just wanted to make sure I mentioned that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let me find, okay, there's the Chief's report. So the Chief's report is 4 pages single space, so I'm probably not going to read all of it. I will read the excerpts that I read to the El Sobrani MAC last week, and then I will send this out to everyone. So let's go up to the top. Okay, so some of you may have heard there was an incident with first responders in Antioch where there were 2 staff members that were shot. So I will read this. And this is from the chief of all of the Contra Costa Fire Protection District, Chief Louis Bouchard. And it begins, Antioch drive-by shooting incident. A Con Fire firefighter and an AMR paramedic were both struck by gunfire at the scene of an EMS call on Saturday evening, February 20th in Antioch. The firefighter was struck in the foot and the medic in the leg. They were both transported to local hospitals in stable condition, and neither injury was life-threatening. Both first responders were released from the hospital on February 21st and were recuperating at home as of the end of last month. And that would be, at the end of February. The incident was an EMS call originally reported to dispatch at 8:53 p.m. for a male patient with abdominal pain. Shots were reported by the Con Fire unit at 9:08 p.m. shortly after firefighters and medics arrived on scene. In spite of the very fortunate outcomes in both cases, this was a very serious incident that we are not ignoring. We are conducting an after-action review to address the incident, including a review of existing policies and protocols to identify any changes that may be warranted. The incident was initially investigated by Antioch PD, with the Contra Costa County Sheriff taking the lead investigative role on February 21st. The sheriff announced the suspect had been arrested on Sunday morning in Richmond. The suspect was taken into custody following a pursuit from the scene in Antioch. The suspect has been publicly identified as 26-year-old Darion Williams of Stockton. After being interviewed by detectives, Williams was booked into the Martinez detention facility on 1 count of murder and 11 counts of attempted murder. At the end of February, he was being held in lieu of bail of approximately $11 million. That concludes that portion. Evacuation planning. The county fire chiefs were awarded a $300,000 urban areas security initiative grant that was funded late last year. The procurement process is wrapping up, and a firm was selected to provide a countywide evacuation planning and operational software system. This was an item of interest in grand jury report number 2007, issued in 2020. Implementation is expected for July 2021. Fire Station 4 update. The district continues to prepare for the reopening of Fire Station 4 in unincorporated Walnut Creek as part of our overall Great Recession recovery planning. Staffing of the station is planned for July 2022, which coincides with the elimination of debt service on our pension obligation bonds. Several logistical and facilities related issues will need to be addressed over the next year as we prepare to reopen the station. It is anticipated overall engine response times will be reduced by an average of 3 to 4 minutes to the immediate area once the station is reopened. And the second to last section I'll read, the COVID-19 vaccination update. Efforts to vaccinate our employees continue as we begin to see benefits surrounding return to work protocols for fully vaccinated employees. As the Fire Operational Area Coordinator for Contra Costa County, the district's efforts to support County Health's request for fire-hosted vaccination clinics continues. Clinics in East, West, and South County are being supported by firefighters, as well as those from all other fire agencies, the Office of the Sheriff, Brentwood PD, Los Medanos Community College Police, Hercules PD, CERT teams, County Medical Reserve Corps, and other agencies. Last week, we began to increase doses administered from 500 per day to 1,000 per day, with a reduced number of total clinics, and are prepared to expand the number of clinics as the situation warrants. The district is also engaged with County Health in planning for potential large-scale vaccination sites. Let's see. In February, the Fire District received approval from the state to operate a standalone vaccine clinic. We have procured an appropriate refrigeration unit, and all elements are in place to function as a separate and distinct clinic, which would allow the district to order and receive vaccination directly from the supply chain. We do not currently plan to initiate this effort, as the need to operate a standalone clinic is not necessary at this time. But having received approval from the state, we have the option of flexibility to do so in the future. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so that'll wrap that up. I'll send the chief's report to everyone else. I will also mention that Station 70 on 23rd Street in San Pablo is now open. There was a event that I did not attend, but Supervisor Joya spoke at. It was pretty funny. It's the first kind of public celebration that I've really seen folks attend. The fire station looks magnificent. It is 2 stories, and the old Station 70 on San Pablo Avenue has been temporary for the last 29 years. So it's nice to have a permanent facility. So that concludes the fire presentation. I also want to mention to folks, if you're interested, if you've not received the vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, there is a no appointment walk-in clinic at the Veterans Hall on 23rd Street. Just walk right on up. They're hoping to administer about 500 doses per day, and that will last until the 25th, so this coming Sunday. If you know someone, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., walk right up to the Veterans Hall. Getting there early in the day is probably better than later in the day, because once they're out, they're out for the day. They'll have to thaw more the next day, but no appointments, just walk right on up. The Veterans Hall on 23rd Street. The address is 968 23rd Street, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. The boundary changes. There were some residents that live on North Arlington that came to the last meeting in January, and I think the special meeting in December. Will Nelson has said that he and his team have to write a board order. And right now we know Will Nelson is the head of the Envision Contra Costa effort. So he let me know in an email this week that he and his staff will be writing the board order and doing all those things after the Envision process wraps up towards the end of May, because they have to include that as part of the Envision Contra Costa update. So anyone worried about whether or not the boundary changes will happen, well, it'll happen before the general plan update happens, because they have to write the border and include it in that, from what Will Nelson told me in the email. So we will get the boundaries changed for the East Richmond Heights MAC to include the North Arlington area that's currently in the Elsa Browning MAC. We will have that done as part of the general plan update with Envision 2040. Eleanor Blake got off this meeting, but she sent me an email wanting to give everyone a heads up that about the Kensington Town Hall that she mentioned, or someone mentioned, maybe John, maybe you mentioned that. So I will include the link to that meeting in the chat for anyone that's interested in attending that Kensington Town Hall next week, I think it is. Let's see, I think I had one other thing I wanted to read. Okay. And then the last part of my presentation tonight will include some highlights from the most recent talking points we have for COVID-19. Drive-through COVID-19 vaccine appointments available this week in San Ramon. Anyone over 18 who lives or works in Contra Costa can get a safe, effective, no-cost COVID-19 vaccine this week without needing to leave their car. Contra Costa Health Services, in partnership with a coalition of first responder agencies in the county, is hosting a 2-day drive-through clinic on Thursday and Friday this week in the parking lot of 2641 Camino Road in San Ramon. Patients will receive their shots from medic-trained firefighters from the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District. Let's see. Let's see through the, oh, nope, I gave everybody that. Okay, well, that will wrap up my report. I really wanted to read the chief's report, mention the vaccination clinic on 23rd Street at the Veterans Hall. Oh, you know what? One last thing. Let me, okay. Contra Costa Health Services is poised to make good on its promise to administer 1 million COVID-19 vaccines by Memorial Day. I'm not sure what happened there. I lost everybody. Can you all hear me? You guys hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm glad it wasn't just me.
I was cut off, but I got back on. I had to get on again, so
I don't know what happened. 4 dozen Zoom meetings. That has never happened. I'm glad it brought you all back.
All I know is Joanne cleared her throat and suddenly everything stopped.
I know, I'm sorry.
I will take that as a sign that I've been talking for probably too long at this point. I wanted to wrap up. Okay, there we go. So I wanted to just give these numbers really quickly. So as of Monday afternoon, county residents had been administered 934,111 doses of COVID-19 vaccine. 597,027 residents were at least partially vaccinated, 64.5% of the 16 or older population. 371,756 residents were fully vaccinated, for 40%. If the recent rate of vaccination continues, the county will administer dose 1 million sometime this week during the week of April 5th through the 11th, the last week for which we have full data. 98,669 doses were administered. In recent weeks, ample allocations from the federal and state governments to Contra Costa have greatly aided the local vaccination effort, supplying as many doses as our clinics can administer. Okay, FDA and CDC recommend pausing use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Use of the one-shot COVID-19 vaccine produced by Johnson & Johnson was temporarily paused this month across California while the government studied the risk of a possible rare side effect that can cause blood clots. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommended the pause last week, guidance that was immediately followed by Contra Costa Health Services and all of California. Johnson & Johnson vaccine is a very small part of Contra Costa's vaccine allocation from the state and federal governments, and CCHS does not anticipate canceling any of its vaccination appointments. Contra Costa Health Services sites had administered 14,269 Johnson & Johnson vaccines. We have had a handful of reports of minor adverse reactions immediately following vaccination, but not related to the blood clotting reaction that prompted the review. The risk of an adverse reaction for people who received Johnson & Johnson vaccine were more than a month ago is extremely low. People who received this vaccine were more recently should contact a healthcare provider if they develop severe headaches, severe abdominal pain, severe leg pain, or shortness of breath. These symptoms are different than the usual minor reactions that some people may experience in the day or two following their vaccination. Federal regulators will meet later this week to determine when the Johnson & Johnson vaccine can be used again. And now that concludes me running my mouth. I will take any questions if folks on the council have questions for me about anything. I will take questions at this time.
You know, I just want to extend the availability of the vaccine, no appointment necessary. I know the one on 23rd Street goes through April 25th, and starting April 26th through May 2nd, they're moving to another site at St. John Missionary Baptist Church, North Campus at 29 8th Street in Richmond. So there's another week right in Richmond here. You can just walk through, and my son did the one on 23rd Street, and it went so smoothly. Got there on Friday morning and was out in 15, you know, just, it was almost like a walkthrough. You get the shot and you're out. He said it wasn't crowded at all. So it's a great place. You won't have to wait.
Some folks have mentioned, and I think it was actually in the, not I think, it was in the news towards the end of last week, that folks believe we're reaching the threshold where everyone that wants to be vaccinated has made the effort to be vaccinated. And that's why our clinics aren't, you know, the lines aren't down the street, why our walk-in clinic that has ability to give 500 to 700 doses is averaging somewhere around 300. I think the high for one day was maybe around 400, but somewhere between 200 and 400 has been what they've been able to get each day. And some of that thought is, you know, we're reaching kind of where folks that want it are the folks out there that have gotten their first and second doses, but time will tell. And we're hopeful that more people will continue to get vaccinated. Mr. Sargent.
Yeah, James, so since we dropped off, the chat's gone. On the link to the Kensington meeting, can you send that to us in an email? And it didn't show what the date of the Kensington next Zoom meeting was.
You know what, let me, I think I still have it bookmarked. Okay, let me add it back to the, what day is that? It is April 27th. From 5:30 to 7:30 p.m.
Okay. So you'll put that link out again. Oh, thank you.
Yep, the Kensington Town. That's the link to the page, and the Zoom link is on that page.
Well, actually, when I clicked on it, it opened the Zoom, so it took me right into it.
Okay. So the link that I just sent should take you to the Envision Contra Costa page.
Okay.
Hopefully. And then you'll see the meeting information, but the meeting is April 27th from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And I do believe Supervisor Joy will be attending that meeting.
Okay, thanks. I got a couple more things.
Please.
When you go back to what the thing that Will was working on and presented to us for the Envision with us and now North Arlington area. So the last map, which is the proposed map, that's what the county's looking at going forward to with the, you know, the redesignation of the properties and so on.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And any questions or ideas, email Will Nelson. I will drop his email address in the chat, but we still want folks to send in concerns, ideas, suggestions. There have been some people that have really wanted a noise ordinance. The county doesn't currently have a noise ordinance for unincorporated spaces. So people are interested in a noise ordinance for East Richmond Heights, it would include the other 33 unincorporated communities, but send that to Mr. Nelson. The more people that send in what they want, and if it's the same thing, the better. But all this will be taken into consideration. But I've been telling folks, if you want something included, now is the time to send it to Mr. Nelson for inclusion.
Okay, any other
questions for me from anyone? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's the same thing. Any questions or comments for James? Okay, and then the next item on our agenda is public comment. Does anyone have any comments on something that was not on our agenda, would like to speak? Yes, Joanna.
Thank you. I just want to let the community know that Open Doors Reopening Committee is submitting its proposed protocols to our conference, which the church conference. We have to follow the rules of the conference, and we're hoping to have a soft open in June. So, but we don't know yet at what point we'll begin using our site for community meetings, in-person meetings. So, but just know that we are going to head back into the building within the next few months. And we are working on our plan to do that. And we look forward to the day when we can all meet together in our space again.
Thank you. We do too. So anyone else? Next item is, does anyone have any other information items that they'd like to share? Okay, seeing none. The next item is subcommittee reports. And I just want to report on a land use subcommittee meeting today. There was an application for 3 variances at 6805 Del Monte Avenue. Actually, it was basically revitalization of an existing garage with no changes. Apparently, the variances they were asking for either were was probably a non-conforming structure that they needed to legalize, but that was not stated in the report, so I'm not quite sure. But there were, the applicant was there. There were no neighbors who showed up, so there were no concerns from the neighbors, and it was on a sloped lot, downward slope. So it needed, that was the height that was necessary to have that height on the downward slope. And the existing side yard setback was 3 inches off 4'9" and a 5 foot required side yard setback. And there was more square footage to the garage than what is allowed in the accessory structure. So the meeting went fine, and based on the fact that there were no neighbors' concerns and that it appeared it was the owner was just revitalizing an existing structure, we recommended approval to the planner. So if there's no questions, the next is, or no other subcommittee reports. The next is announcements. So on our, Joanna.
Sorry, I forgot this earlier. I want to announce 2 things. We are looking at renting our space to a small parent group that's going to run a summer camp. So contact Crestmont School if you're interested in that summer camp. And Crestmont School has room in their kindergarten class for next year, and they want to get out the word about that. So.
Okay.
Joanna, if they have a flyer for that, can you email that to me? If they have any information, if there's any information related to what Crestmont's doing, can you send me the flyer, please?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay, and our future meetings are on Wednesday, July 21st and Wednesday, October 20th. And the Wildcat Canyon Fire Response Meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, April 28th, next week at 11 a.m. And the contact for anyone listening is Kate Rauch, kate.rauch@bos.cccounty.us. And now, does anyone have any requests for speakers for upcoming MAC meetings?
I don't know.
I think we have a whole list of them, James.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Do we have a whole?
And I don't know when we want the Envision 2024 people to come back. I don't know if it's now or in a few months or year. I don't know.
He will definitely, Will is definitely going to come back, or a member of the planning department will definitely come back to us with an update for sure. To give just a general update of what they've done and likely the direction that they're going with the community profile, but also because we're changing the borders. So they'll have to come back.
Okay.
It may be a special meeting like we did in December, but for sure, Mr. Nelson will be coming back, or someone from planning.
Okay. And James, we don't have a vice chair. It's vacant right now. So maybe we can put that on the next agenda.
Absolutely.
To elect a vice chair. And any other final comments? Stephanie?
I just had a question. Is there going to be the Summer Arts Festival? Is there any planning around that?
So I've not heard from the folks that plan that. And I imagine it'll just kind of, they'll play it by ear as we begin to open up more as we get closer to the summer. But I have not been contacted about it. I hope we do, but I've not heard yet.
I talked to some residents, and I think it was like you just said, James, like we just don't know if we can, so it's too hard to plan right now.
Yeah, and I think it takes a lot of planning in advance too. It might be difficult to pull off under current circumstances, not being sure what limitations are on public gatherings and things. And it changes, so frequently. So I don't know, maybe our best hope is, unfortunately, either a fall one or a summer of 22.
Unfortunate, but I think you're right.
Yeah, I agree with you, Joanne. When I look at what the schools have had to do, the school district started in-person services on Monday, and it's been an incredible lift for them to get to that point and to make it safe enough that people felt they want to go back. It's totally voluntary, and only half of the teachers have volunteered to go back, and 80% of the classified, and I think about half of the students maybe have gone back. I don't know what the numbers are for Mira Vista, but I feel like it's very high. Just there's just a lot of concern about being in big groups still, I think. Mm-hmm. So, and I agree with you, Joanne, that if there was going to be a festival like that, it would have to have been started planning last month. It takes a lot of work to pull something like that together.
Right.
So.
Lots of permits, and noticing the neighbors is usually where I get pulled into at some point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I have one question
Sure.
about the current rule for the playgrounds? So I think at the beginning of COVID, I saw there was a yellow tape around them, and they were closed. Then the yellow tape just gone, so kids are back. So I do want to validate any rules. Was the playground open for all kids now, or there's a limitation of how many kids can be on the structure, or that the kids needed to be masked because there are a lot of kids they are not masked? So I just want to know if what is the county like what's the county rule for playgrounds now?
So the tape has come down. So the county doesn't have like a parks and recreation district. So the county doesn't have any parks. So the parks you see are either in the city of Richmond or one of the other adjacent cities. And if the tape is down, then folks are, you and your kids can go to the park, but everything that we do, always keep in mind the 6 feet of physical distance that we're asking. And that's what the health services department would tell you. If you're taking your children to the park, do your very best to keep distance between, your children and things like that. But that's the best guidance that's out there right now.
Okay.
Yeah, the playground rules got lifted actually quite a while ago. I think in the summer. I can't remember, but that, you know, they started and then, I can't remember when it was. And I don't believe there was ever a, I work in education. So I don't think there was ever a maximum, because it would be pretty tricky to have that kind of regulation because playgrounds are so different. So I think it's like you're saying, James, it's masks and distance are the only way to regulate playgrounds. There's lots of different rules about different age kids. So if you're talking about tiny little kids at playgrounds, like 2-year-olds, I actually have no idea.
Be careful, be safe. You know,
yeah.
The county couldn't give a number. You know, you can have 6 children at the park. Well, you know, whose 6 children are going to be the ones that get to play when there's 20 parents standing in a line? So it was either all or nothing.
Yeah, I got that. I was just, you know, like I haven't really let my daughter play there. So I just wonder if it's even legal to go there since the tape just mysteriously gone. So I just wonder if it's lifted or it's just the people just took them out.
It's a great question. And I took my nephew and younger cousins to the park Monday evening. So
yeah.
Good to go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So I want to thank you, James, for your really comprehensive report you gave us with all the information. And thank you, Officer Baza, for sticking with us throughout the meeting. We're glad to have you. And and if anyone would like to just make a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion, John.
Okay, a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor, let's just aye.
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 Oh, okay, thank you, everybody. Stay safe and see you in a couple months.
Take care,
Okay,
everybody.
bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.